I'm Mara Webster with In Creative Company, and today I'm thrilled to be talking about the wonderful movie Fitting In, being joined by Maddie Ziegler and Emily Hampshire. And Maddie, starting with you, I mean, you're playing a character that is based in large part on Molly McGlynn, the writer and director's own personal experiences. And I've heard you say that you were immediately drawn to the character in the script, but that it felt like a really daunting prospect, particularly in terms of the journey with health struggles that you're representing in the film. And so I was really interested in kind of how you approached distilling it down to a place that felt much more manageable and less daunting in your approach as you started to figure out how you wanted to play her on screen.
Yeah, I obviously just wanted to tell Molly's story with as much love and grace behind it. But I think something that was actually really important that I don't know if I've talked about, but Molly actually gave me the opportunity to speak to two girls who have MRKH, and they shared their personal stories with me, which was like so incredibly eye-opening and very important to hear leading up to this film, and gave me so much insight and knowledge, and I'm very grateful to have that experience. And they've been like championing this film so heavy, and it's been so nice to have their support and to feel like I'm hopefully doing them justice and representing their community in the best way that I can. But yeah, I was so drawn to this story, like you said, and I just wanted to tell it with as much love and care as I could.
I love that. And for you, Emily, I've heard you kind of describe that one of the things that you loved about this story, and a lot of the things that you're drawn to, are stories which in essence tell a really big picture story, but do it by being very specific. And so given that you felt that the script really captured that, how did that set about you wanting to make very specific choices in your character and your performance as a result?
Oh, wow, that's a great question. But I do believe that when something is so personal and specific, it becomes universal. And that was Molly's personal story, that she put those specific things in. And then finding out that my character Rita was based on Molly's mother added another layer to that. I just felt like Molly gave both of us the permission to then make the characters our own and make our own choices. And what weirdly happened in that was there's this scene at the end when Lindy, Maddie's character, calls me a MILF. That was an ad lib by Maddie, which I'm very complimented by. But in between setups of that, Molly said to me, she's like, what? Because I was going out, Rita was going out on a date, and she's like, what perfume do you think Rita would wear? And I just said, black opium, just like that. And she's like, that's the perfume my mother wore. And like, I had no idea of that. I never even thought of black opium before in my life.
Weird,
and it was so weird. And it just kind of brought it all full circle. It just felt like
you were where you needed to be.
Yeah.
That's such a great detail. And Maddie, with your performance with Lindy as well, you know, there's kind of so much that people are saying to her, and she's kind of self-editing herself a lot. You know, when her friend asks her for a tampon and she's like, oh, I just don't have one on me, because she doesn't want to go into the conversation about it's because I haven't had a period yet. And so she's constantly self-editing in a lot of ways. And so as you were going through the script and going through scenes, how did you make sure that you were finding those moments where she would need to have that self-awareness and kind of hold herself back?
Yeah, it's interesting because me personally, obviously, I'm pretty open with my close friends and family, but I am pretty reserved with newer people, and I feel similar to Lindy in that way, because it's actually so scary, I think, as anyone, but I think being a young girl and finding yourself and growing up, for me in the public eye, it's like very daunting and a scary experience to open yourself up to so many different opinions. And even in the film, the moment where Lindy kind of shares to Viv, like, that she doesn't get her period, and she's like, oh, that's you're so lucky that you don't get your period. It's so interesting, the response, because obviously to Lindy, all she wants is to just feel normal. That's what she, and in that moment that they have, we have, where, she's like, I just want you to feel like a normal teenager, and she's like, I'm not normal, like, you're not normal. And that's actually like the biggest takeaway of this film, is like, none of us are normal. Like, we're all just trying to figure it out. We all have flaws. And I think it's really important to have that representation on screen. And I hope everyone can see themselves when watching that.
Absolutely. And, Emily, with you as well, I'm playing Rita. It's really heartbreaking to watch a mother who just so wants to be able to protect and change things for her daughter,
Mhm.
and is essentially kind of being shut out in communication because that's just how teenagers exist and
Yeah.
communicate, and shutting down a little bit. And I think you do a beautiful job at capturing this very specific love language. It's like, okay, I know you're not going to talk to me, but I can take you to a diner and give you your favorite food after a doctor's appointment. And
I
so
love
how did you set about finding, the quiet ways that she's just like expressing herself and trying to create space of like whenever you're ready?
Oh, I love that you call that a love language. It's so special. Honestly, that was in the script, like that, those moments and which were so specific and were in the script. And so I can't take any credit for that, but I love them so much.
And do you remember, I think originally we weren't eating that at the diner, but we both like expressed our love for like ice cream and dipping
And-
fries into
yeah.
it, and so Molly changed it for us, so
Yeah.
we could enjoy that on set, which was really fun.
Yeah.
I mean, I think you've both done such a great job in capturing that real complexity that exists in a relationship where, it's just the two of them. Like they've been so self-reliant on one another. And so friction is allowed to exist on the surface. They're allowed to say abrasive things out loud. And 2 seconds later, they can turn around and say, I love you to one another. So how did you make sure that you were always capturing the complexities and allowing for those emotional swings that they have in their relationship?
Yeah, I mean, I think any teenager with their mom is very similar, at least with my mom. Like I still like now feel like I'm apologizing to her because I feel like when you're being like that angsty teen, you just lash out on your mom, and I've done that so many times, and I never meant it really. I deeply love her so much, and so I think to see that portrayed is just very accurate, and I think everyone can relate to some extent. And so I was able to pull probably from real life. But yeah, I think when you're I think they're pretty codependent on each other. So I think it's inevitable that they would lash out and do those things. And you're just trying to honestly, even in that moment where there's that vulnerability with Rita and she shows her scar, like they mirror each other. And I think they realize they're actually more similar than they think. And they just want to like love and protect each other. I think that's the core of what their relationship is.
I remember reading in the script, Rita's description said, Rita, she'll either, you're never sure if she's gonna slap you or hug you. And I remember like, that was so, I hung on to that in a way that's very much a teenager too. And in the relationship with Lindy, like you said, they're very codependent, and there is this sense of Rita has this shame of her body that she doesn't want to pass on to Lindy, but like that thing where the thing you don't want to happen, you're kind of accidentally saying it, and like don't say the elephant in the room, and you're trying to, like, she's doing it all the wrong way, but she's trying
So hard, yeah.
Yeah, I love how flawed she is.
And with you as well, Maddie, I think, going off the back of what you were saying about the emotional swings of the character, Molly's writing and your performance really honor those emotional swings that you have at that stage in life and how real it is, especially when you're existing in the bubble of a high school world. And, your friend not talking to you is the biggest thing that's happening in your entire existence at that time. And so how did you make sure that in playing her, that you were kind of like really respecting and honoring those emotional swings and allowing for that in your performance?
It's already hard enough as it is to be a teenager and go to public school and find friends and feel like you're loved, and on top of that, to have this diagnosis is just her whole world is turned around. And I think, it's interesting because I think in a lot of ways she suppresses the feelings that are going on, which causes her to lash out in ways. And I think that's just her coping with everything going on in her life. And I think in moments like that, it was almost just like it was just inevitable, so I just kind of let it happen the way it did. And like we said, Molly just wrote the script just so beautifully, and it was so accurate on how any normal person would react. There's so many levels of tragedy and trauma and going through those things. Like 1 second you feel calm and peaceful, and the next second you feel rage, and I think that's a very normal human experience. So it was nice to have those, I guess, represented on screen.
Yeah. And one of the things that I was thinking about when you were talking about the codependence, Emily, was, it feels a little bit like Rita hides out in that space of codependence, because we meet her in the film at this place of a little bit of stasis. She's kind of struggling to figure out how to move forward in her own life. So it's, if I focus my attention on my daughter, then I don't have to think about myself. And so how do you find those touch points of the ways that she starts to kind of really give herself the time and the love and the attention that she needs as well?
Yeah, well, we call this movie a coming of age dramedy, but I think it's also a coming of middle age dramedy for Rita. She's going through dating and trying to be a mom, and her daughter's going through the experience that is heartbreaking, and so I think it is just trying to be all the things as a woman that you think you should be, and realizing that your perfectly flawed self is all you need to be.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And Maddie, I wanted to ask you about filming numerous scenes where you're essentially kind of going through the medical procedure in Lindy being at home with the dilators, because I think you've done a beautiful job at capturing the incredibly raw and vulnerable emotional experience of what that is for her. And it's kind of a touch point throughout the movie. There's multiple scenes where it's really just you and the camera. And so how did you work with Molly to kind of figure out what are the different emotional touch points throughout the film, and what are the different styles and moments of vulnerability that she's experiencing with this?
Yeah, I think especially the dilation scenes, she goes through every sort of phase of emotion. I think it's like part of her is just like, I have to do this, so I have to be brave and I have to put on this strong face and just push through. And then there's obviously moments of frustration of like, why do I have to be going through this? I'm like a teenager already experiencing so many emotions, and on top of this I have to be at home isolating myself doing this. And Molly really was able to give me so much insight and so much backstory and information, because obviously she went through this in real time. And I know for her also, for her to kind of relive all of this, we haven't really even talked about it, but she had to fully relive all of this again. Like, no, and it's just wild. And I'm just like, I just wanted to, obviously, like I said, just have as much care and love behind this for her, because I know it would be really, really hard for her to watch, I'm sure. And she just honestly emotionally got me there just by giving me some like backstory and telling me in the moment, like, this is how I was feeling, this is what I did. And I just instantly, I was like, we need to go. So I'm like, so I was already emotionally there. So yeah.
And lastly, the two of you were touching upon the scene towards the end of the film where, Rita, in essence, as a way of communicating to her daughter, is showing her her own scar from breast cancer treatments. And I just thought it was such a beautiful moment of a way that they communicate and they really connect with each other, and wanted to ask about just finding the right emotional tone and moment for your characters in a scene like that.
Oh my God. I love that scene so much.
Me too. I don't know how to answer that, other than, again, it was just so honestly written and so vulnerable, and also generous of Rita to like show herself to Lindy, for Lindy to see that, like, oh, I don't know.
No, I agree. I think I felt so like Lindy felt so stripped down, and so like, here is me, and you had just watched that, but to actually be on the receiving end of that and to see her fully stripped down was like so emotional and such a vulnerable moment. And I think they really truly saw each other eye to eye in that moment.
It kind of is that Me Too thing.
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
Me Too, and that's what I do love that this movie does, is it
brings people together.
Yeah. It admits your biggest fear, and the minute you speak it out loud, like at the end, Lindy, reclaims her power. The thing that she's so embarrassed about, she screams and says, this is me. And then the minute you do that, the rest of the world feels like they can do that too. And it just is so empowering to embrace all of who you are, warts and all, even though no one has warts.
I have a word.
Did you have a word?
When I was younger. Down award. So that's me. I'm sharing my truth. Yeah.
It's your Lindy moment.
Yeah. Oh, it feels good.
You and your words, don't touch me with your words.
It's gone. I froze it off when I was like 8.
Well, I really, really love what you've both done with these characters and the way that you've told this story in collaboration with Molly. So congratulations on the film and thank you so much.
Thank you so much.